Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Doctors NBA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. F. Scott Feil, and as always, I'm running this fast break with Dr. Robert Pagnani. Here at the Fantasy Doctors, we're using our expertise in the world of sports injuries to bring you the most up-to-date and injury-specific information to take your fantasy game to the next level and make the best, most well-informed decisions you possibly can.
Yeah, Scotty, gone are the days of these so-called experts and handicappers throwing darts at the wall hoping something's going to stick. It's time to take the information that we have at our fingertips, analyze it, and apply our 20-plus years of experience so you can put together and manage the best fantasy hoop squad week to week. So let's go to opening tip. So we start off, as always, with the position of point guard. Here we go again. Curse of the Bulls. I was really pulling for them, but they're first on our list already.
Week 2.
Oh, man. So point guard, Chris Dunn, grade 2 left MCL sprain is what they're calling it. He's expected to require 4 to 6 weeks to recover. Now, to me, 4 to 6 weeks, that's pretty hopeful for a grade 2. We know the MCL is kind of the stabilizing ligament on the inside of the knee. Being able to run or jog comfortably in 4 to 6 weeks, maybe. Now, being able to cut, jump, sprint, that's a whole different story. Dunn's a solid player. He puts up like 9 points, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds a game. He does a little bit of everything. It's a big hit to the Bulls, I think. And again, I think 4 to 6 weeks, that's probably a little hopeful.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree, Bobby. I mean, you're talking, a grade 2 is a partial tear, so we know there is some damage there. It's just going to be a matter of how well it responds to rehab and treatment.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the thing that always scares me with an MCL sprain or tear coming back early is an ACL tear looming if you try and rush. So,
yep, we talked about that all last season, and, we look out for it again this season, I'm sure. Sticking with the point guard position, Fred VanVleet of the Toronto Raptors sat out a previous game with a left big toe sprain. It's likely he's going to miss Friday's game. This is most likely the equivalent of turf toe. You hear about that a lot in football. Although it seems minimal, this type of injury has ended careers. I mean, talking about the football, you go back to Jeremy Shockey. That guy dealt with turf toe his whole career, and it really did cut it short, I think, But we're just kind of going to assume that because he is listed day-to-day that the toe's not too bad. We're hoping just kind of a grade 1 sprain or strain. Again, if it's a light case of turf toe, we're looking at maybe 7 to 10 days, and he should be back on the court. But it's something to watch for sure.
Yeah, definitely an injury that, although seems minimal, when you think about how much these guys push off, how much they land sprinting, it plays it's a big deal in what they go through. We move on to the shooting guard position, and big news in this position, James Harden, the beard, right? So he's nursing a grade 1 left hamstring strain. He'll be reevaluated in a week. He'll miss Friday's game against the Clippers and against the Trailblazers on Tuesday. So optimally, they're thinking 3 weeks till he's back. I say Houston slow plays this a little bit with him. He's missed a couple of games last year, from what I remember, with a hamstring tweak. The Rockets are kind of having a rough go already. They've got some suspensions. Now the beard's banged up a little bit. They're talking about a looming trade for Jimmy Butler, and this might even put a little bit more of a push on bringing him into Houston.
Man, that was a lot of first-round picks that I was seeing for that Butler trade. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, crazy.
Moving right along, Will Barton, the Denver Nuggets. He's likely to miss 5 to 6 weeks after having surgery to repair right hip injury and core strain. Essentially, Barton signed a 4-year deal to remain in Denver over the summer. He averaged 15.7 points, 4.1 assists. The guy was the real deal for Denver last year. You talked about him a lot. Typical report, he said, he planted to make a little bit of a cut and a jump, and, he kind of felt the pop. Never a good sign when you hear that pop, but rehab, he's going to take some time. He'll have to ease back into the play, in the flow of things. But I honestly think, again, that 4 to 6 weeks is a little bit hopeful.
Yeah, I totally agree, Scotty. I think I read a little bit more, and they've called it a hip, and really what he's dealing with was a groin, an adductor muscle. And, anybody who's pulled a groin, whether you're a weekend warrior or an athlete or just a guy who stepped wrong, these take a long time. And to come back and perform at his level is going to take a while. Tough. It's another one of those teams. I love Denver. They've been kind of at the beginning. They want to get going, and then they get nailed with injury. So another big name, and these are big names in the NBA world, big names on our fantasy levels, guys that do it all. Andrew Wiggins, right? Former lottery pick, and basically this cornerstone of the building in Minnesota. He's listed as day-to-day with a quad injury. Reports say he was able to participate in non-contact drills in practice, which probably means he's nearing a return soon. I'd say with him, it's going to be an all-or-none type return. I don't think they're going to ease him back in. I think they're going to give him a green light in the next game or two, and he's just going to be back full-fledged. I don't think we have to worry about his minutes or production or anything once he's got the green light.
For sure. I think with a quad, you either know or you don't. I think you're right on with that. Another big injury, Devin Booker, the Phoenix Suns, guy that we talked about a lot last year as well. Booker exited the last contest due to a left hamstring issue. The injury was enough that he had to leave the game early and he could not return. He's ruled out of tonight's game. We'll have to watch closely on this one. But, Booker's game is pure explosiveness, and a bad hammy definitely limits that. Like we talked about, the push-off, the explosiveness. He's been on a bit of a tear this season, putting up some pretty big numbers. So the Suns need him back quickly, but they need him to be there for the entire season. So if they're going to build around him, I expect this to be a slow play as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. A guy, like you said, we talked about him a ton last year. Another one of those teams, Phoenix, that's right on the cusp of kind of breaking through, and then take an injury like this, kind of see how it goes. We move on to a small forward position. We talked about this guy last week, and it's a bit more of an update. Kevin Knox for your Knicks. He's still out with that bad left ankle that he tweaked. Reports say that he was able to put up some shots at practice. Now, to me, I thought this was an interesting report. They didn't say that he's participating in non-contact drills. They didn't say that he's participating on 5-on-5. They said he was able to put up some shots. So I think this ankle injury is maybe a little bit more than your hometown Knicks are letting on.
Yeah, I mean, we're not exactly the kings of stealth reporting, but yeah, I think you're right on there. I think it's probably closer to a grade 2. It is a low ankle sprain, though. We did see that. So, to me, that's a little bit better than the high ankle sprain where he's out there with a walking boot. But, sure. Again, just another tough blow for the Knicks. Moving on to the power forward position, John Collins of the Atlanta Hawks is recovering from a non-surgical procedure on his ankle. He's expected to remain out of the lineup until at least the start of November. There's a ton of ankle injuries, but this guy now has a timeline that's, maybe looking at next week or so. He's a guy who averaged 10.5 points, 7 boards, plus a block a game. I mean, he's a big part of what's going on down there in Atlanta, and he's a guy we want to keep an eye on. So, it's, again, another big name with an ankle injury. We'll just have to watch closely.
Yeah, ankle injuries and hamstrings have definitely been the winners of the most frequent injuries so far. Okay, Scotty, I'm taking us back to Chicago. We got another guy. Oddly enough, MCL injuries are going around in Chicago. Their power forward, Bobby Portis, same deal. Sprained MCL on his right knee. They said he's likely to miss 4 to 6 weeks. He's going to spend time on the bench with his buddy Chris Dunn. It's another guy in Chicago who's a 10-10 guy, big contributor. And I'm going to go back to my pick last week about Levine. He is just looking at getting more and more touches, especially with these bad knees going around.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of just a quick check-in down there in Cleveland. Kevin Love, he's kind of dealing with some foot soreness. He's not going to play Thursday against the Pistons. We'll just kind of have to watch this throughout the whole weekend and see when he comes back. I'm wondering if this is just kind of a beginning of the season, just kind of getting used to getting his legs underneath him again and trying to build up that endurance. So we'll have to kind of watch. But Kevin Love was up and down all last season as well. So,
yeah, and I think, with LeBron leaving town, they're going to have to depend on him quite a bit more. So I bet you're right. I think they look for some opportunities to rest him a little bit and see how he goes. Another guy who is a big name, Blake Griffin for the Detroit Pistons. He's dealing with a right ankle sprain. Not expected really to mess with him, but something to keep on the radar. Again, we talk about it almost, every other guy, the explosiveness. Now, Blake Griffin, now you're really talking about explosiveness. If the ankle starts to get in his way, He could be throwing up more jump shots. We'd rather see him drive into the cup, but we'll keep an eye on it.
For sure.
That takes us right into the center position. This is a bit of just a kind of an interesting side note. Nene down in Houston again, right? They're banged up or suspended. He's expected to miss 3 to 4 weeks due to a right calf strain. Now, they're actually calling this a setback in his original rehab from a calf strain. So in my mind, that leads me to believe this is a bit of a bigger problem than they were letting on as well. To kind of restrain a calf strain, there might be a little bit more to it.
Yeah, I would agree. Marc Gasol, he left the game due to a neck injury. It's expected that he'll probably suit up against the Suns. We're going to have to keep a close eye on this one, though, because he has a history of back problems. And, even though he plays more of that Euro-type style, he still bangs around quite a bit. He's still a big man. Things could be creeping up his spine a little bit, getting into the neck. Neck deals are typically muscle issues, right? It's usually a spasm to that upper trapezius muscle or something like that. But, if you've got a stinger there and you're starting to feel symptoms going down the arms, you can have weakness, numbness, tingling, just a lot of weird stuff. So we're going to have to really keep an eye out for Gasol and his neck to see what happens over the next couple days.
Yeah, definitely something to watch for. I think we talked last week specifically about Memphis and how all of a sudden these guys are 12 years into their career. So
exactly,
not going to quite bounce back as early as we thought or as soon as we thought. And this is definitely something that could mess up his game a little bit.
For sure.
All right, Scotty, that brings us to our picks of the week. All right, I'll go ahead and kick things off. So I'm going to go ahead and mention a name that it seemed like we were kind of updating every week of last year, and I'm going to go pro him, right? So Mike Conley, point guard for Memphis, the old guys now, right? So we can't forget about this guy. He only played 12 games last year due to what they originally called a foot and then a heel and then an Achilles. Regardless, he was out with some bone spur issues and some foot and heel problems. He pretty much sat out all last year. The good news is he's back. It's been early in the season, but he's already averaged 20 a game plus 6 dimes and 4 boards. With the big men hurting in Memphis, as we've just talked about, you got a well-rested point guard who's always been a bit of a scorer more than anything. I think he's going to get plenty of looks and opportunities to create. He's got Phoenix, who's a little bit banged up. Washington and my hometown Jazz coming up. He'll have some tough matchups, but he likes to shine in those spots, so I think he's going to do well. Another point guard is my second pick, Darren Fox, point guard for the Sacktown Kings. 6'3" athlete, right? He's listed as a point, but plays more like a 2 at times. He's long, which creates a ton of transition points for him. He's been getting a ton of minutes, which probably would happen for you and I in Sacramento as well if we were on the roster. He's been making the most of it. He's averaging 17 a game, adding 7 dishes as well, and tends to grab a few boards. He's kind of got this complete game, and he's got his running mate, Cauley Stein, there to finish for him. He's a standout on this young team in Sacramento, and he's got the heat and the magic up, which sets him up pretty good. Third pick, I'm moving off the point guard position and going to the center. I got Nikola Vucevic. Sorry about that. Center for the Magic. Legit 7-footer coming into this year. He's in his 7th year also as a player. And out of the gates, he's already averaging a 20-10 double-double. And he's throwing in a block a game. He actually put up a triple-double against Philly with a line of 27, 13 boards, and 12 assists. Now, this guy's a true Euro center. Even in that game, he went 4 for 4 from deep behind the arc. And, I looked at that line, thought maybe this guy's a fluke. But since then, he put up 24 in his last 2 outings, including one against the Celtics. The Bucks, Kings, and the Clips are up next for him. And if you got a 7-footer that can bang and also shoot the 3, I think good things for him going ahead.
For sure. Yeah, the guy's the real deal. He looked good in the summer league for sure. But, you kind of went with a little bit smaller lineup for this 3 picks this week, Bobby. I'm going a little bit larger. I'm going with 2 centers this week. First, I'm going with the Brow. It's a safe pick. But one of the things I've noticed this season is that guy gets more calls than anybody else in the league. I mean, he is just getting – it reminded me of like the Hack-a-Shack where like they would just, hack Shaq and get him to the foul line. But Davis is just so athletic that, he ends up not only getting to the line, but he completes some of these plays too. So he's getting the 3-point options. So the Brow is my pick for the first one this week, and I think the guy should have been MVP. I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting couple of seasons over the next few years just to see the MVP battle here in and out. Next pick, Hardaway. I mean, I can finally say I've got a Nick that I can pick and stick with, right? Until the unicorn gets back, I mean, we don't have anybody else. Literally, there is nobody else in New York to do anything. So Tim Hardaway Jr. is the guy in New York for the next several months. He's putting up good numbers. I think he had 30, 32, something like that against Golden State. Golden State still won, but the guy is the Knicks for the next few months until we can get the unicorn back from surgery. So, and then last but not least, another big guy. I'm going with Karl Anthony Towns, and I think the center out of Minnesota there is going to have to start stepping it up a little bit more than he already is. I mean, he does a lot, but if some of these rumblings on the trade block are true, I think we're looking at a possible. I mean, a situation where he ends up being the only guy there in Minnesota. If Butler ends up getting traded, I don't know, what they get in return, but in the form of picks, it's looking like he's going to be the building block for the next couple of years. So that's all I got for this week.
I love those picks, Scotty. Let me ask you something. The Brow, I love that pick. I'll come back to him with a question. Love Hardaway. He's going to get plenty of looks. We know that. Listen, you throw those kind of numbers up against Golden State, it's not like you're just rolling into a town and able to roll out of bed and put up numbers on them.
Right.
Tough game to score against. Towns, I think you're right. Butler, whether or not he leaves anytime soon, the chaos that's going around is going to create opportunities. And Towns he's playing for a big contract. He's going to settle in there nice.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. The Brow, I totally agree with you. The other thing is he converts on his free throws, which is a big deal. I also love the pick of him because I think this is a contract year for him.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Let me ask you this, though. Is his contract in New Orleans that he's playing for?
No chance. I don't think so. I think it looks as though New York is trying to lure KG up there. It wouldn't surprise me if that doesn't happen. I mean, if not, no offense to my home team, but if I'm KG, I'm not looking at New York. So I think the Brow or another big name from a smaller market could make their way up to New York and do some really good things. It's going to be interesting. I think realistically, if the Knicks could convert the Brow, that allows Porzingis to kind of be that shooting forward or that strong forward that he really wants to be anyway. So, I don't think he minds playing the center position. I just think he thinks he's a little more versatile than that. And I would agree. I mean, the guy can do it all. So,
I think you're right. I think there's no way he stays down there.
There's especially with Boogie being gone and there's just nothing left for him down there. So at this point, he plays for himself. He has a great season and sayonara.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. I love the idea of him going to New York. I love your optimism. I think he'll be in L.A., but I think it's a good thought for you, and I think you're right. Porzingis, him, and Hardaway, as you already talked about, that's a nice punch right there.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up in L.A. I think LeBron was quoted the other day as saying he knew what he got himself into heading out there to L.A., and he did. It's still a young team. It's still a rebuilding process. But I think LeBron is patient enough to wait it out the 2 to 3 years it needs to start getting to that point of, competing for championships. And obviously that's probably where he's going to end out his career. So it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up out west there. And that would be a really dangerous team if that happens.
Good call. It'd be amazing to see how those super teams start to affect fantasy as well. Less looks, less numbers, but you can't not play those guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in again. We can't thank you enough for listening to us week in and week out. We hope you keep coming and support us, and we'll keep giving you guys all the information you need to make the best possible, most well-informed decisions for your fantasy basketball leagues. And we hope that you guys keep checking us out week after week. Thanks so much.